December 9th. We are a third of the way through this month. We are wave 1 of PTU, and the big question on everyone's mind, okay, not everyone's mind. Many people have already made their minds up. 4.0 is not coming out this year. The question on a lot of people's minds, though, outside of that, is it going to reach live this month, or are they going to try and do something else? And I'm thinking a lot of people are expecting that open PTU by the end of the year, and then sort of like they did with 3.18. So we're going to look at what they're offering with 4.0, what's planned. More exciting way to look at what might happen here is what they've done in the past, because everybody says, yeah, they like to drop bad patches at the end of the year and then go on break and never touch them. But as we go through these patches over the last several years, you will realize that is not entirely true. And so there are a couple different things they might do. After that, we're going to go look at 3.0's release. Yeah, we're going to talk about how 3.0 came out and what people were saying back then, because it's pretty funny, the reaction to that patch. That's 7 years ago now, December 23rd, 2017. It's been a cool minute. All right, 4.0. Mr. Big Patch, Mr. Name Dropper. You think you're a big deal? You think you're going to make videos for 7 years claiming that you're the next big patch and that you're going to change the game and then get here and maybe not? Let's see what you have to offer. First up, contested zones. Somebody actually just said in chat, like literally, I don't even think I have to scroll up to see it. Yeah, I do have to scroll up to see it. I lied. I'm sorry. There it is. Sudsman. Sudsman said that they're having a good time with contested zones. I will say, while I don't think I've experienced contested zones as they're meant to be experienced, they seem pretty fun. The little bit of conflict I've gotten into it has really given me a lot better feeling of working in a squad or working through difficult scenarios in more than just like a little bite, little 4-year-old bite of like these. Literally, the way that we play this game right now are like little Kinder eggs of gameplay. Just a little tiny thing, pop it in a wrapper, give it to a kid, they eat it in one bite. Just not that much. You go into a bunker, you clear out 10 people, most of them are dead before you even get there because the NPCs are shooting themselves, you know? It's like the FPS experience is very lackluster in Star Citizen. So contested zones have offered a more what feels like drawn out conflict. Oh, I love Kinder eggs too, you know? Like, that's why I still keep coming back, because they are yummy. They're just very small and glitchy and broken. And I'd like better NPCs, but that's besides the point. Contested zones, they hit a nice spot. And at some point when the game actually runs smooth enough for me to experience them fully, I'm betting they'll be fun, and especially when there's good loot to find. I like that they have kitted out weapons in there. Maybe you get some extra little things that you can't buy at shops. I think we should start getting better attachments that can be found in loot. So ultimately, I think contested zones are actually I hesitate to say one of the better parts of 4.0 just because it's very gameplay focused and offers a new way of experiencing gameplay, but it's not for everybody. This kind of location is definitely not for everyone, and it also does a little bit to diffuse the way that Star Citizen is formatted. Like, it's a separated section that is protected by an armistice zone, which, depending on who you are, is kind of going against what's expected from Star Citizen long term. Yeah, they're like dark zones from The Division, and they do a good job of being a specific place you can go for that kind of combat. I hope that that's not long term. Like, I hope we can still do combat everywhere. It's just that, you know, for a fact this is where people are going for it. But we will see how heavily they keep armistice zones on. Like, it's weird to have an armistice zone in Pyro, but again, we'll see what they do with that. We've talked enough about that at this point. Asteroid bases are the other location being brought in with Pyro, and I've not been able to confirm, but somebody said these are actually the same in each location. Anybody in chat, can you make a statement about that? Or anybody in comments watching this after the fact? If these are the same in every location, I'm going to be pretty disappointed. That's not cool. They said that? Okay, I've got two different messages in chat. They said that, and I don't think they are. They said the initial releases will all be the same. Dude, that's pretty wild to me. If asteroid bases are all the same. I mean, we've seen their tools with Houdini and Mighty Bridge and Rastar, just like all of the different ways they have to procedurally generate at least the same rules with different layouts have been around. I'm disappointed by the fact that they're all the same. Cool that they're going to change later. That's good. But at least for this initial release, it would have been nice to have some variety between them. I'm assuming at least what's inside has variety. The loot, the weapons, the enemies. Yeah, they shoot you when you try to land, which is interesting. What I haven't been able to figure out with 4.0 yet is really how much your rep can influence that kind of stuff. I've gotten shot at by gangs. I don't know what that was about, but it would be nice to know that certain space stations are fair game and certain ones are off limits depending on your reputation. They still haven't really confirmed that for 4.0, I don't think. Someone said they were all the same and people took that to mean perfect copy paste and the hate train rolled down the hill. I mean, I was speaking to somebody the other day who's been playing in them and they said that they've all been the same that they've visited. But again, it's not confirmed. So I'm asking you guys. I don't think they ever sold us on the idea that these asteroid... we should go back to what they talked about with asteroid bases. That's a good point. Because I would be interested in knowing what was the marketing around asteroid bases. Was it really that grand? Asteroid bases.
Pyro has a number of asteroid clusters. They are the newer, larger asteroid clusters, so they should look and feel very different to the ones in Stanton.
Asteroid bases for us are really trying to take advantage of our universe better in terms of the locations that we have. Space is big, space is massive, but for our game, often we don't take as much usage of it as we should. We're taking procedural asteroids and we're carving these locations into it. And we're really providing a lot of variety in the gameplay in a form factor of space.
Essentially, we're utilizing the station interior set that we have created and we're wrapping them around an asteroid, a big asteroid that allows us to be a lot more versatile.
So they're using their space station interior set. So like they've got the assets for this on the interior. The reason I would be so disappointed if the interiors were all the same is because I would not be surprised at all if they aren't. Like I go into this expecting them to have diverse interiors because they've got the assets, they've got these tools to make these locations. It just makes sense to me. And that's why I understand if the outside is the same, because that's more of the new side of the asset here. Yeah, they're doing some art and stuff here, but in terms of connecting hallways and rooms together, they've been doing that a while and they've got that kind of architecture in the Pyro space station. So it's the outside of the asteroids that I'd be like, okay, maybe that art-wise, they all look the same. So we'll see.
With the kit that we have and create some interesting layouts for you.
See a little gun glitch there?
And create some interesting layouts.
A little oops moment
for you.
Asteroid Base gives us the opportunity to create missions where you can be in space, then you have to go on the interior to...
See, all this stuff looks very similar to the Pyro space stations themselves. So I imagine it was easy enough to use some of the art assets from that to make these new locations as well. It's just more diversity of locations in Pyro.
Continue the mission. We made a little twist of the bunker, little space where we can have some missions, but in space.
Sometimes we could start with ship combat. You could have heavily defended areas on the outside.
This is pretty nice, and it makes it sound like the asteroid bases are going to just be kind of like more intense and diversified versions of the 890 jump boarding mission we have, which is one of the best missions in Star Citizen. So don't get me wrong, I'm interested in this stuff. What did they say about
enemies outside on the landing pad.
Some of them even have Copion infestations.
That should be fun.
That should be fun.
Asteroid bases are not just for combat. Because they're procedural asteroids,
Tell that to the turrets outside.
one of the things that's really cool about them is we can have multiple routes into these locations. So players can EVA and enter through a vent hatch. You could find your way in through a hangar. You could go straight through the front door. But there's a lot of room for exploration, finding loot that's been hidden there with loot crates, and find certain items that are important for you that you want to use to progress through Pyro, things that you haven't seen before in Stanton.
Can you tell us what that is?
No, I don't want to spoil it.
God, I hope they're the Volt weapons. That'd be perfect.
As a baseline, we wanted to bring Pyro up to par with all the content that we already have in Stanton, but also make it unique. We believe that with the addition of contested zones and asteroid stations and all the other little
So they don't
pieces
really talk about the
will
idea
give
that
us-
they're all diverse. Like, I don't think they're very, from what we've seen of asteroid bases so far, I don't think this is inaccurate marketing for these locations. It just feels like they're basically like, yeah, we're going to put gameplay inside these new space locations, but they don't necessarily say what that gameplay is outside of the fact that you'll be doing combat, you'll be able to explore and loot stuff, and you'll be able to entrance from multiple locations.
unique aspects that really make it feel different from
What will
Stanton.
Volt Guy do then? Shoot, they're going to bring us more weapons.
Finally getting your hands
FPS
on
weapons. It's time for us to get some again. We haven't gotten FPS weapons in this game since I think 3.12. You guys know how long it's been since the weapons team has been so set on Squadron 42 stuff. You have to come all the way back here to find some weapon deliveries. Let's see, is it here? No, not even here. Here we go. These are the last time weapons were added. In 2020. Please bring the Volt guys back. Bring the FPS team back to the PU.
a lot of effort put into them. There's a lot more diversity now inside and outside of the stations, both in terms of visuals and design.
Asteroid bases and contested zones for us are two really exciting new location types that we're bringing to the fans for Pyro. It's not a global event, so it's long term. It's always going to be there. You can come back.
It's the best
get
part
new
of it.
Cool stuff. Advance your progression and have fun with your friends and your party, your orgs, and have a great time in Pyro.
Oh, there's somebody on Spectrum who keeps asking when they're coming. That's pretty funny.
What else do
Okay, so that's just wanted to go over Asteroid facilities real quick there. The rest of 4.0 is, I mean, you guys know, it's very much focused on, can you all collapse yourselves? Oh, I'm going to have to do this for all of them now, huh? The rest of this stuff is very focused around Pyro. So you've got Pyro 1, Pyro 2, Pyro 3, Pyro 4, Pyro 5, Pyro 6. 6 planets, which we've never received. The most we've ever seen in an update. I think this is a part that's, because Pyro has lost so much of its pizzazz taking so long, this stuff doesn't really matter that much to us anymore. It's like not as big a deal. We've only ever had 1 planet dropped in an update. And when Microtech was dropped in as a new planet, it loaded the game so heavily that they had to remove one of the other ones. For those who weren't around during 3.10-ish time, we had Delamar from the Nyx system was one of the first places you could land. Little planet asteroid kind of thing. And they had to straight up remove it from the game because the game was just, it did its job, which is what they said. They were like, we just wanted it to be a place you could land for all this time until you could land other places. But they added all the Crusader moons. They added Hurston all its moons, ArcCorp all its moons. It wasn't until Microtech came in that they were like, okay, this game's getting heavy. We're going to remove Delamar so you can keep adding more stuff. So it was just like 1 planet at a time. They're about to add 6 planets at one time. And not as novel anymore. I think a few years ago, if they had actually hit their goal for 4.0 in 2020, this would have been crazy. But now new planets are not that interesting. It's more the gameplay that comes with them. They mooned us. So we're getting 6 different planets. Most interesting, I think, among them being Pyro 4, which is actually in orbit around Pyro 5. So you get these amazing views of a planet within proximity of a planet, whereas normally you just get a planet within proximity of a moon. You get some nicer looks like this. Let me see if I can actually... Iris. I recorded some footage of them. Yeah, so because you have a planet next to a planet, you get a different vibe because they both have very noticeable atmospheres. This planet normally has rings, so you see that. And then on top of that, you see this other planet. And then because this is a planet, you can see its moons in orbit around it. So you see these little white dots. So just amazing freaking views. And I think a lot of the Pyro system is like that. It's a very beautiful place. It's definitely eye candy. And then obviously Pedro Camacho has put in music to make it take 2 steps up in quality. So beautiful place, good addition, but ultimately this is just space. The real benefits of Pyro coming in are these contested zones, the asteroid bases, and these outposts, which are the other point of interest that we're going to see. These are nice. I think they're much bigger and better than the outposts we already have. Biggest thing that I'm noticing with these locations is that they bring in multiple locations. So you get one central hub kind of town, and then you'll get like antennas over here, a power station over here, maybe another meeting point with a building and some landing zones out here. They're all like a couple kilometers distance. So you can tell that there's more of a move towards centralized hub gameplay on planets and in locations, rather than sending you from one planet to the other to run missions. These outposts make it very clear that's the direction we're heading, which I think is going to have people doing more gameplay and less traveling. Pyro space stations, we've talked about a little bit. They include the contested zones. I think these are cool space stations, but honestly, I think they fall short of what I expected from Pyro space stations. Like, they're big and they've got some cool inclusions, but likely a lot of what makes these stations cool or nice isn't in game yet. Being able to find missions in there, being able to explore the back alleys and like the cold hallways and find loot. Like, if you go to their older explanations of these stations, the concept art gives you this feeling of like, this is a very large interior space, and you'll be able to go and explore it and find random people that are kind of camped out in this space, almost to the point where they're living off the grid and people don't know they're in their station, but that's just how big the station is. And the way they used to talk about it sort of gave you that idea. Seeing if I can find any of those videos for you. I think they're partially there, like they're getting there, but I still don't quite get it. So if you look at this map, it shows you how the heat is supposed to work here, and you're supposed to notice that this is the warm place where people are, and this is the warm place where people are, and this is a very cold back hallway where nobody is, and you can find other stuff there. But when I'm walking through the station, it feels mostly uniform in terms of the scattering of NPCs. So you don't get that idea that this is an abandoned space station and there are dangerous corners here as opposed to corners where everybody spends their time. It just still feels kind of like in Stanton, where the whole space station is the same and you just run around it and there's people left and right and all that kind of stuff. So I'm guessing some of that comes down to the AI and the way the AI works. I think they don't have enough loot to make it really feel correct. And I think they probably put a lot of the work they were putting there into the contested zones, which were not likely a plan back when they were showing us this concept art. Because you look at this, and this definitely feels like it belongs more in a contested zone, but it also, this is 2021, back when they were talking about space stations being their own self-contained thing that didn't have contested zones. At least that's not what they told us. So I hope they continue to improve. They probably will, but at least right now, I think they still feel quite bare. And of all of the things we're seeing in the Pyro system, the space stations feel the most similar to the ones in Stanton. I'll say this, they're much bigger. The interior is much larger, and there's more space to move around. But in terms of what there is to do, still feels quite similar, and I think Pyro itself will still feel quite like that, even in 4.0. Because yes, we're getting new locations and new things, but what I've been saying throughout this whole time is like, these outposts are great. They show that they're being built in a way that is meant to diversify that gameplay, but that's not quite there. I'm like, yes, these are new outposts and they have different local locations that they're going to have local missions in, but I'm not seeing the local missions yet. So until that happens, that's what really starts to make it feel different. Running around new locations feels good, but you're not necessarily playing the game differently yet. And I think that the outposts and space stations both have that kind of vibe. But hold your horses, because down here in gameplay, they talk about new missions, location repair. They said implementing new missions that introduce engineering gameplay into the persistent universe, first appearing in Pyro's outposts. Players will be tasked with going to the location and fixing wind turbines, relays, moisture extractors, or solar panels. This is done by repairing pipes with your multi-tool, charging batteries with the new charge drain feature, or replacing broken components in the network that are broken or missing. There's your difference. If they can release this feature and these missions to these new outposts in 4.0, then yes, these new locations will actually, I think, feel tangibly different if there are enough missions. But I don't think these are going to be at space stations still. So stations still have some work to do, but the outposts could be receiving some of these localized missions I've been talking about. I saw one of them pop up when we were doing gameplay the other day. Remember, we were hanging out in 4.0. But then we fell through the surface of the planet, so we couldn't tell. Another thing that I think would help the Pyro space stations feel more different is going back to the footage I was showing you. The expansiveness of them, the fact that they are abandoned, leaves a lot of, like, these sorts of... There's so much space to these. Even the size of the stations are much bigger than Stanton's. So I would expect there to be more of, like I said, these sort of cold, abandoned back alleys that you can just sort of see. And I think what ended up happening was they moved those colder back alleys that you might want to explore into the contested zones. So I think contested zones weren't really part of the initial plan of these space stations, but over time, they decided they wanted to make central hotspot locations that people could know they can go to for the gameplay they're looking for. A bit of a shift, to be honest. A bit of a vibe shift for Star Citizen, I think, for some people. But not unheard of, not something that we didn't know was coming. If you go back to a talk that Todd Pappy had with Jared.
Ready to see your
I've done it again. Go back to a talk that Todd Pappy had with Jared in 2020. He talks about this a little bit. Let me see if I can find that spot.
And then as far as, even just how the fights play out. So let's say you and I are fighting PvP, basically out in the middle of nowhere. So, and if so, then I think it should happen there. Then we also obviously have like abandoned space stations and Jumptown and these
Korea, the hotspots.
Exactly. So we have certain hotspots, within the system that I still think they're 100% valid, and that people should be able to go there and try that out.
So what he's saying here is basically they want to have some kind of risk always involved in Star Citizen. 90% you're safe, 10% you're at risk in a system like Terra. 10% you're safe, 90% you're at risk in a system like Pyro. What he's saying is, even outside of that idea that those things can always happen, they want to have hotspot gameplay areas that players know for a fact, hey, I'm introducing a friend to this game and we want to go and get into some fun gameplay in a certain type of way. We are going to go to a contested zone. That's what they're aiming for here. And I think building that philosophy into these locations, into these asteroid bases and specifically these space stations is what introduced contested zones. And it's why the Pyro space stations maybe don't feel as huge as they did when they were first talking about sort of how they would form and this idea that there'd be back alleys. But still have these abandoned locations that you can explore and you can do all that stuff. It's just that they want to make sure that you know it's still a danger area. But that being said, I think there's still work going to the Pyro space stations that'll make them work a little better. Let's see. Space stations. So here's the moons. We had the Pyro, the planets. They've also got some moons included. Around Pyro 5, you got cows, new missions. Jump points are a big one. This is obviously jump points and server meshing are what the whole point of 4.0. That's why they took so long with all of this. And this is like, at the end of the day, this is the only thing that is confirmed will actually come with 4.0 for sure. Everything else can be kicked if it needs to be, as engineering was. Most of this stuff is confirmed location-wise. Not these. It's weird that contested zones are not confirmed, but the Pyro space stations are. I wonder if they'd actually split those up. And then the mission system refactor will be important, and we don't really know much about what's going on there, but that will hopefully help missions run better and not fail and do the things they're supposed to. Unfortunately, we did lose the transit system refactor, which was also going to help a lot with like elevators and trains and stuff, but that's 4.0. So, like, not a huge amount of stuff, but server meshing's pretty big and important. Now, let's look at past updates and how those were delivered, specifically the Q4 ones. Will they drop this patch at the last day possible, December 24th, and then leave? What have they done in the past? May, March, April, December. So 3.16, yikesies. 3.16 came out in December. Yeah, 3.16 was released at the end of December 21st. And it really didn't include too much stuff, to be honest. Because it kind of capped off the progress that was made from 3.15, which changed a lot of stuff. So in 3.16, we really just got derelict locations. It's kind of the only real thing worth note. 3.15 was like the big inventory change and all of that stuff. So 3.16 was actually on 3.15's code base. And not that unstable, so they released it on the 23rd. Let's look back at 3.12. December 17th. If they pushed it live today, they'd have 10 days to hotfix into a good state before vacation. Not 10 days, but 14? They definitely push these patches out later than you would expect. 3.12, is that even on here? No, they just go back to 3.13. Where's 3.12? Historic updates. Okay, 3.12 went live on December 17th. Went to Evocati on the 1st of December of that same year. But if I'm not mistaken, I think there was a 3.12 update on the 24th as well. 3.12.0b came out on the 17th. Okay, so that wasn't it. I might be thinking of a different year, to be honest. All right, 3.12.0b. Okay, yeah, so they released 3.12 on December 17th, and then 1 week later, they hot patched 3.12 with 3.12.0a in order to make it more stable before they left for holiday break. So that would confirm then on, what year was that? In 2020 and in 2021, they released patches on December 23rd. In 2022, they released a patch on, I think also the 23rd or the 24th maybe. Let's see, 3.18 was released March 10th. When was the PTU though? I know it was in December. I don't know what the specific day was. December 5th was Evocati, 3.18 Wave 1. So December 19th-ish. So in 2022 then, they released 3.18, basically around next week, at the end of next week. So the most likely scenario I'm seeing is next week, if they're going to release it, because that would then give them at least, no, I'm sorry, that wouldn't even work out. I don't think they would do something the 23rd or 24th of this year. So I think that would leave them to the 20th. So it might actually be like they need to release by the end of this week if they want to be able to do a hot fix. Oh boyo. Even if they did a late next week release and then work the weekend, that only gives them 2 to 3 days. Yeah. Late next week might be a one and done kind of patch. I don't know. They might actually want to try and get, I would say at the very least, open PTU by the end of this week. That, dude, their timeline's not looking good. Yeah, I think honestly their best course of action is open PTU at the end of next week, and then just wait until you come back to push it live. What are the major blockers? You know what? That is a good question. I think I had the current patch notes. No, I didn't. I had the patch notes for 3.17. They need the Guardian to sell. Yeah, I mean, I imagine they want to try and sell something by the end of this month. They probably absolutely want to push 4.0 by the end of this month, but it just does not look like a good scenario. Nope. If we were at this point 2 weeks ago, then yeah, maybe, but like, they're cutting it so close now, which is unfortunate. What are the big blockers though? Let's see. I think what it feels like to me is the when you get to a populated area, that's when it feels rough. Everything else in 4.0 feels fine. Flying around. Granted, I fell through the floor, I think. That was a problem. But once you get away from populated areas, it feels okay. Most of the problems I've been dealing with are problems that I deal with in live. So it's nice that it doesn't feel like they are problems that are particularly linked to server meshing, but we also don't know how server meshing complicates the game to cause those problems to pop up. So it could be server meshing, not really any way of knowing. EPTU has been nice and smooth the last few nights, so I've heard. But what we can see from some of these past updates is that previous December patches were not necessarily the last day possible. A lot of times they would be released a week or so beforehand, and then they would try to throw in a hot fix of some sort before they leave for holidays. But I do wonder if they would be willing to try and put this out live on the last day and then also not leave for the holidays. They're in such a tough situation right now, and I don't think we're getting a lot of the anxiety that probably is internal. But with where they are, I think they're really hurting to need to get 4.0 out, and they really want to, and I don't think they have much of a, they don't feel, at least maybe, like they don't have much of a choice besides pushing it. So let's move on to 3.0's launch. 3.0 came out in December of 2017. It was a very similar situation actually to what we're seeing with 4.0 right now. The crazy part about it is that 3.0 was similar to 4.0 in that it was told to players that they would be seeing 3.0 pretty soon. It was CitizenCon of 2016, I think. CitizenCon 2016. You could go back to the infamous Sandworm demo and listen to what Chris was saying. So this would have been October 10th of 2016. Imagine if this happened at CitizenCon 2023 talking about 4.0. I don't think it's too hard to imagine that, because this is basically what happened.
Whether it's in space or on foot, sort of fun, quick, easy to get into, much better than.
Wow, that's very quiet.
Today,
man, that sound they used to do is just.
And so I'm just going to walk you through, before we get to the fun stuff, kind of our roadmap. Obviously, we talked about 3.0 back in Gamescom, which is sort of the first kind of, you would consider, yeah, that's, I wouldn't say it's what Star Citizen the final game is going to be, but a lot of games, if they had those features, they would be very happy. Which is, going to have trading, cargo, piracy, smuggling, mercenary, bounty hunter, which we talked about. We're going to try to, get the Stanton system in there fleshed out. It's going to be using the Planet V2 technology, which I am going to show you very shortly after I've gone through these slides, which I think you guys are going to like. And, in 3.0 we'll have...
So they were trying to do updates to basic professions. They were trying to roll a new star system out more in line with the size of the game. New missions, new vehicles. Fairly similar to 4.0. And I'll say this. I think the main difference between 3.0 and 4.0, and this is what we'll go over after this video segment, is that 3.0 was a definitive cutoff. For those who feel like we've been in a drought since 3.23. Now, obviously, the standards are supposed to improve over years. I'm not saying it should all be the same as it was before. But when 3.0 was planned, the time in between this update, this segment, in October 10th of 2016, all the way to the actual launch of Star Citizen 3.0 in December 23rd of 2017, the time that we now would have experienced between CitizenCon last year and now, there was no content. They didn't drop any updates for us. It was, you sit on what you have from this presentation, and then we give you 3.0. And the biggest difference between what they did there and with 4.0 is that with 4.0, they've split a lot of that stuff off throughout the year and released it probably for good cause in other patches. So like if they had done everything that they wanted to in 4.0, we would have been screwed. There just would have been too much new stuff. Everything would have been broken. But imagine if they had done the same thing. If they had stopped after CitizenCon of 2023 and they said everything that is in 322, 323, 324, and 4.0 will all come in one patch. Distribution centers, character customizer, the cargo refactor, the arena commander stuff, these new places, the freight elevators, the cargo changes, the new missions, the Mobi-Glass, the map, the looting system, interaction, EVA, reputation, Pyro, space stations, ships, vehicles, all that stuff. If they had just taken that and put it in 4.0, that was a pretty significant change from what we're getting now, because instead of just holding off everything for an entire year like they did with 3.0, they released stuff as it was ready. So I think that both puts a big hit on 4.0, makes it feel like a smaller patch comparatively than 3.0 was at its time. I also think it makes the wait for 4.0 a little bit easier, but it also emphasizes the similarities of what these two patches were trying to do, if you assume 323 and 24 are part of the 4.0 branch. But if we go to 3.0's patch notes, where these are all being released, you'll see people's reactions to it were pretty funny. People called it the PowerPoint update. This person was pissed. I don't know how to say this, but I've been looking forward to 3.0 for months now. I was even tempted to upgrade to a Hull C, but the last 2 days have been kind of a letdown for me. It's not the performance or the alpha aspects of the game that worry me, it's some of the design decisions. Sound familiar? Dude, I swear, some things never f***ing change, and I don't expect them to. As the game continues to be developed, more and more people will be both pleased and unhappy about design decisions. I wonder what was going on. Let's see. Navigating 7 coordinates using the whole Mobi-Glass mess is just so cumbersome. Awkward even. It's like using some old Nokia phone where you had to crawl through 20 submenus and fiddle around with a lot of buttons just to access a basic feature like your camera. I'm wondering, I don't remember how much the Mobi-Glass changed in between 2.6 and 3.0, but that's, I don't know if it became much more difficult to use. Interesting. In 3.0, just setting a course to a landing site on another planet means 2 minutes of fiddling around with strange zoom sliders, clicking on a target, getting the out of reach block, selecting another target, clicking and fiddling some more, and come on. Okay, so that's right. Before 3.0, basically to quantum travel, you would just point somewhere with your ship and then go. And that's because there weren't that many quantum markers, so you could very easily just pick it out from your HUD while you're in your ship. After 3.0, they added a lot more locations, so they made it so you go to the Mobi-Glass to do it. But that's still kind of true, right? Like, people still don't really have a great experience selecting quantum travel destinations. And I was hoping that'd be fixed for 4.0. All of it requires to zoom in until your nose touches the instrument because the projected HUD and cockpit visuals just do not work. It feels like gaming with 800 by 600 resolution 15 years back. Is this the future of high fidelity gaming? I hope not. So there were problems back then, as there are, as we do. We love problems. We go through the problems. We dwell on the problems. We thrive in the problems. We stew in the problems. And stewing's good for tomatoes. Try it. Great flavoring. Somebody said deploying over Christmas. That's bold. I would be damned to just copy and paste the actual same comments from the 3.0 release into the 4.0 thread, because it's like the same stuff. Like, everything that they're saying is so on point. This comment literally says, yeah, I understand them wanting to keep the hype train rolling after the Squadron 42 up stuff, but the game just isn't ready. I swear to God, somebody said that in chat just today. I love this. We're repeating history. This person said, the glorious 8 to 17 FPS with major stuttering. Sorry, you talking about 3.24? Granted, thank God, and this is not hyperbolic. We were actually getting single-digit frame rates when 3.0 came out. Like, they took a year to release this game, this patch. From talking about it to releasing it, they took a whole year, and then when it came out, it was absolute trash in performance. We were actually averaging 8 to 10 frames per second. It was awful. Up until we got object container streaming a solid 7 months later, 8 months, 9 months later, we got object container streaming. This is what made the game run better. It was so bad when 3.0 came out. And to be quite honest, I don't think 4.0 is going to be that bad when it hits. I think it'll be rough, but not like this. That's not hyperbolic at all. This person said this is pretty much untestable with 50 people on the servers. The game was barely running with 50 people. Sub 10 frames per second is impossible to play. They need to consider limiting the server populations until they can get better performance. Otherwise, nothing is going to get tested. Sub 10 frames per second was very much the case. You could paste this entire page and not a single person would notice. Yeah. This person said, I can't even play, like 0.25 frames per second. Guess I'll wait until further code optimization, which took 9 months. This is a mistake. After all the hype CIG gave this patch, it is not playable. God. No one new to Star Citizen should even attempt to buy SC for 3.0 or even consider buying it for years to come at this point. Great for the rest of the backers, but I implore the community to not sugarcoat this game or try and get new people interested when you won't even get above 6 frames per second. Let's see, more reports of 12 to 15 frames per second. This person's saying they couldn't get above 6 frames per second. Here, this person's saying 15 frames per second. This person's saying, have the FPS been fixed now? But yeah, this is like, it's all very much talking about poor performance and just a not great release. We were essentially lied to because the reason for delay for 3.0 was supposed to be to fix performance and polish. It takes 30 minutes to launch the game and then 12 minutes to stand up. What is the point of releasing something that is that unplayable? And then this person said, so they can say they released in 2017 in order to avoid the delayed again. It's been over a year, bad PR. Dude, we're reliving history. Somebody actually said this today. And it's very, very possible reason for them trying to push it out this year. Granted, thank God it hasn't been over a year. Well, okay, we can take a step back from that statement. It's been over 6 years. Person said, why is it so broken? I mean, like, you guys get the point. I won't keep going. We can all see the 3.0 launch was almost exactly the same as the 4.0 launch, both in the idea behind it, what it was doing for the game, the anticipation, the expectations, and most likely the performance. But I do think that just like with 3.0, within a couple of updates of this, the game was running better than it ever had before 3.0, and it was a much more enjoyable experience. Obviously, it was still not great because we're still playing a situation that is not terrible, but many of you have probably heard people say that this game has gotten worse over time in terms of performance from other things, and I think that's just because of the load that was added on with planets and all that stuff. I genuinely think that after 4.0, stability will take a step up with Star Citizen. Maybe not right at launch. Might take them a little while to get like a couple of hot fixes in. But I think that overall, server meshing is going to help this game in the same way that 3.0's technology did and object container streaming did. I just think we might have a couple hard spots. For that reason, I don't know if they should go live with this month. I think they should definitely go open PTU at the very least, but still not really much knowing how this is going to release. I just think it's very interesting to see what 3.0 looked like and then extrapolate from there. Bunch of different variables, but it's still a fun little thought experiment. 4.0, I think, will be one of those moments where Star Citizen's reach goes further out into the casual more regular gaming community. And I would want it to look at least somewhat decent. I would definitely want it to look like it's something new compared to what I've been showing people for the last 7 years, and that means showing the jump to Pyro smoothly, and showing some of the gangs in Pyro and stuff, showing why this is actually a different kind of update. Server meshing's cool, but it's not shiny. It's not going to convince people.